In this movie, we'll create DiffPair objects. Then we'll use the DiffPair properties screen to define properties for these objects and watch them being built visually in the VISUEYES dynamic display. To define DiffPairs and to apply constraints to them, go down to the lower tab Physical Properties, go to the drop-down menu, and select DiffPair VISUEYES. In this movie, we'll apply capture DiffPair type properties, the kind of properties that apply to all layers on a board. In the next movie, we'll create DiffPair by layer C-sets and apply those to the stack-up. This is the VISUEYES DiffPair display. There's two windows, one for applying properties and the second for being able to visualize them parametrically as you create the DiffPair object. Our first step is to create the DiffPair objects. We'll go to the Define DiffPairs button and press that. The Define DiffPairs window is open, and let's choose the nets we want to create DiffPairs from. So we'll choose the Choose Nets button, and I'll go to our search. The DiffPair net names in the schematic all have _n or _p suffixes. So I'm going to use a wildcard selection in the filter to find them and collect them. First, I'll do a *_n, do an apply, choose select highlighted nets and put them in my collection box. Collection box is a temporary collection list so that I can review it before actually doing a final selection. Next, I'll do a search and highlight for *_p. Add those to my collection box. I like my list, and I'll say OK, and that will populate the Define DiffPair screen. The nets we've just selected now populate both columns, Net 1 and Net 2. In the Net 1 list, I want to select all the nets that end in the _n suffix. Hit Tab, and then populate the second list with the _p so that I can combine the n's and the p's. Hit Tab again, and I'm going to give each DiffPair object my own prefix. I'll call it DP_. Once I've done all these steps, I can just say Assign Pairs. My DiffPair objects have been created, and I'll say Save. And the screen closes, and now I've created my DiffPair objects. I can create all my DiffPair objects in that screen, and then if I have different properties for different collections of DiffPairs, I can then choose those to populate incrementally this screen. In this example, I'm going to choose them all. So I'll highlight them all, say OK, and now we can define and apply properties to this collection of DiffPairs. The VISUEYES screen will display graphically and parametrically the DiffPair construction as we apply properties to the DiffPair objects. Because in this example we're not using by layer C-sets, we're using the capture properties that apply to all layers. We only need to see one view, a top view of the DiffPairs. We don't need to see it by layers. I'll turn off all layers and then turn top back on, and I'll zoom up our display. As we apply properties, we'll see the DiffPair construction displayed in the VISUEYES screen. I'll select all the DiffPairs because that's who we're going to apply these properties to. I'll first apply our minimum line width to build the DiffPair with. I'll put in 10 mils, tab to the next field, and I'll put in a 10 mil primary gap. Now the next thing we'd like to define is the minimum neck width and the neck gap. I'll put in 6 mils for each of those. For the minimum space, I'll put in 5 mils. That will be shown in a different color. Since I have a minimum space of 5, which is one less than my DiffPair neck gap of 6, I'll allow a diff coupled minus of 1 as well. And I won't put in for this example a diff coupled plus. And now I'll select Apply Fields to selected cells. So we've created our DiffPair. We've defined DiffPair properties, applied them to all of our DiffPair objects, and we get a verification visually that we've defined the kind of DiffPair construction that we were aiming for in the VISUEYES display. The last step to apply all these properties is to select Save. In the constraint window, we can scroll down to the DiffPair objects that we've created. There's the clocks. There's our other DiffPairs. We can also select the label of the property to toggle and bring all of our DiffPair objects visible. Another way to select and display the DiffPair objects in the constraint window is to go to Nets, Filter Nets. We could select them again by highlighting or collecting them. We can also go up here and select DiffPairs, which will display all the DiffPair objects. Select them, put those objects in the collection box, say OK. And now only those selected nets, in this case the DiffPair objects, fill the constraint window display. Another way to select and display the DiffPair objects is to actually go down to Physical Properties tab, do the pull-down menu, and select DiffPairs. This window displays just the DiffPair objects and all of their properties. I've selected all the DiffPairs in the constraint window and turned on Make Cap to Capture Cross Probe to select them in Capture. Let's take a look at the properties that have been applied in Property Editor. There's our DiffPair objects and all the DiffPair properties that we applied and created in the DiffPair screens. Let's net rev from the Capture Desktop to the BRD to bring our DiffPair objects and properties into Constraint Manager. I'll go to Setup and make sure I select the SideCAR Allegro CFG file, and then run NetRev. In the updated BRD file, I'll go over to the Physical Worksheet in Constraint Manager. And go over to the Netlist display. We can see that all of our DiffPair objects have been defined. And all of our DiffPair properties applied to the nets in the DiffPair objects. In our next movie, we'll create physical C-sets with DiffPair definitions by layer.